all the platforms that you can imagine selling a product. Suspense thriller, there's always an audience for it.
Welcome to Digital Media Insiders. I'm Laura M. Beamer, and today we're going to be talking with special guest, writer and producer Ken Sanders. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good, thanks. So I wanted to know, for the majority of your films, what genre would you place them in?
I would say the majority of them would be categorized as suspense thrillers. I've done a few that you might simply call drama, but mostly the suspense thriller genre, and more in the dramatic direction of suspense thriller as opposed to the, say, horror direction of suspense thriller. Yeah.
Okay. And what have you come to enjoy most about these films that you're making, the suspense thrillers?
Well, I seem to have an inclination for it, and I don't know why that is. But I do think back to when I was a kid and I was doodling and writing my own little stories, and I think the first thing I ever wrote was a murder mystery, and I can't remember what it was called, but I do remember writing a little book and showing it to my mother, and my mother kept it for many years, and I'm sure it's long since vanished. But that seemed to be the thing that popped out of me right from the beginning, and so I just enjoy it for some reason.
Good, and you're good at it too, so might as well keep it going, right?
Well, it also helps, by the way. There's a practical side to it as well, and that is that genre is one of the most enduring and commercial genres, and it works across many different platforms. I mean, it works, DVD, theatrical DVD, VOD, TV, all the platforms that you can imagine selling a product. Suspense thriller, there's always an audience for it.
Yes, of course. I mean, Prisoners just came out, and that was huge, huge suspense thriller. What networks do you usually work for?
In recent years, Lifetime Television has bought a number of my films. I've worked on films that were sold to HBO, and I've worked with CBS before on some other things that I did probably 15, 20 years ago. I've probably, if I thought about it, there's probably a few others, but those are the main ones that pop into my head.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Do you usually work with the same crew on each of these shoots?
Yes, I do. In recent years, when I set up my company Shadowland, the idea was to make multiple films a year, and it certainly helps in the efficiency of the production process to have as many of the same people, because they kind of learn your system. They know what to expect. They help things to move along quicker. I do tend to have a lot of the same people working from film to film.
Before you started your own production company, did you have the control to hire who you wanted, or was it more up to the networks?
Well, I never, in most situations, I did not work for the networks.
Oh, okay.
I worked for other production companies prior to starting my own, and I was actually producing for those companies, and so I did have something to say about the crew people that we would bring in on those shows, and we tended to use a lot of the same people over and over again, just like I do today.
Mm-hmm. And for these movies where they're suspense thrillers that kind of revolve around women being in danger, correct me if I'm wrong, right?
That is correct.
Yeah. So do you find that you like to have more females on set than you would normally for a different genre?
Well, if we're talking about the in front of the camera, I think it would be safe to say that most of my films have a predominantly female cast. Mm-hmm. In fact, if I look at the typical film that I would do, I would say it's probably 60–70% of the cast would be female on a typical film that I would do. That's not to say that you can't do a suspense thriller with a mostly male cast. It's a different kind of it's probably going to yield a different kind of a movie. Since most of my films revolve around family, revolve around child-parent relationships, I tend to have a lot of good roles for women in those kinds of stories. And by the way, I do tend to work with a lot of women behind the camera as well. I've had women in just about every position behind the camera, and a lot of the same people coming back show after show. So it's it's good to it's always good to have the input. It's always good to have the input of the female crew member when you have a film that is to some degree being aimed at a female audience.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I can't wait to keep talking about this. We'll be right back.